Thank you all for joining the Enhancing the Power of Salesforce with DevOps and Copado webinar. Couple of housekeeping items before we go into the content. All participants will be on mute. If you'd like to answer a question to any of the speakers, please go ahead and type in Q&A. We'll go through every question at the end of the presentation. And also there will be a poll question coming up about 4 to 5. As we go through the presentation, please take a few seconds to answer them. My name is Nixon. I lead a Salesforce and DevOps practice for soft clouds. I have about 2 decades of experience in CRM space. In the past decade, mostly on Salesforce and DevOps and digital transformation. I work with the Fortune 500 clients around the globally. So I'll be looking forward to share my experience and working with other speakers. Then we have David Brooks, is head of a product strategy at Copado. David, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure, Nixon. Thanks a lot. David Brooks, SVP of Product Strategy at Copado. I had the privilege of being the first employee of Copado in the U.S. and been here about 4 years. And prior to that, I was at Salesforce from 2005 to 2014. So 9 years at Salesforce as VP of Product Management. Was the original product owner of App Exchange and ran about a third of the Force.com platform while I was there.
Thank you, David. We have James Goodall, is worked with the several Fortune 100 companies, lifecycle CTO. James, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Nixon. So, Nick said, James Goodale. I'm going to be walking you through today an experience with Copado and Salesforce. I've been a leader in IT for many years and focused on transformation and scaling organizations. So, really excited to share my story with you today about customer success and how we can move forward with automation in our products.
Thank you, James. The way we structured today, I'm going to talk about the digital transformation. Then David Brooks is going to take us dive down into DevOps and Copado. Then James is going to have a client success story, how they worked on that organization. Digital transformation is in everybody's mind. There's a common term, everybody talks about it. Any organization which goes through transformation itself, it's a hard. When you talk about digital transformation, it's a lot more harder. The statistics shows like 1/3 of the company is successful when they go through transformation. That number falls to less than 10% when they go through digital transformation. So it's a process not only on just changing your sales, marketing, services, entire business processes. It's kind of starting with the customer centric. I believe that digital strategy transformation starts with the customer and end with the customer. How do you change the whole processes and processes around the client? So that's what about digital transformation. The data shows clearly it's in everybody's mind, from the CEO to the executive suite. Everybody's thinking about it. They know it's important for them, whether it's changing their product or revenue stream. They are all embracing that. There is a right opportunity right now. Even though everybody's talking about it, everybody's doing it, we see not many people are successful. The statistics shows people who are on the more technology front, like tech, media, and telecom, their success rate is only about 20% successful. But when you go to other industry like automotive, manufacturing, industrial, their success rate in digital transformation, where at the end of the whole process, they say it's 5 to 10%. So there's a lot of gap what the vision leadership wants to do it, where they end up. So there's a lot of studies there, a lot of reports, you can look at it. At the end of the day, I think based on our experience, based on the expertise we have here, we think there's one critical part which is missing to make this digital transformations very successful. We think that would say DevOps. The trend is changing, the people are adapting. Some organizations are very forward-looking, they're able to be successful, and others still behind. So DevOps is a process, like as we all know, like there is a business wants the changes, they're ready to go on a next level to take the customers. But the development team and operation team, there's a silos they work on sometimes, they don't want to be in the same space where development want to get it faster, but operation wants the stability and the security and the control of the system. So the constant battle between those two operational level. So DevOps kind of helps you to bridge that gap. some of the statistics, you can see the advantage of a DevOps, how the more faster you can deploy and you're less likely to the failure, which even if it happens, the faster recovery. So lead time to code to deployment changes significantly. I can go on a list of advantages why DevOps has to be part of this process for the digital transformation. If I have to highlight like a few items, I think transparency. I think transparency is very critical. So that makes the whole process and the code deployment and also taking the solution directly to the customers and onboarding customer, that makes it across the enterprise very easy. Dynamic iteration cycle. So there's a lot of things, advantages it offers. Salesforce kind of established as a leader when it comes to digital transformation space. Every industry is embracing their solutions and going forward on that. So we think DevOps is a critical piece where it's kind of missing in that particular aspect of it. So we think DevOps and Salesforce are very critical for digital transformation. And some of the advantages we can see, I worked with the Fortune 500 clients who didn't have a DevOps solutions, where we're doing an old way of code migrations. When I saw that they migrated to the DevOps tool, it kind of changed day and night. The solution we can offer, the faster we can take from one end to another end. So there's a lot of advantages in DevOps. I personally work with a DevOps. I can't have better a company and a product than I'm very proud to have this panel with me, where Copado saved us many of the solutions we were trying to do a digital transformation for our clients. So I'd like to invite David Brooks from Copado to walk us through Copado in depth. David?
Thanks a lot, Nixon. So Copado is a DevOps solution for Salesforce application and customizations. We enable the entire lifecycle of DevOps and orchestrate that. It's an end-to-end software development lifecycle process, and it's for low coders and no coders. So one of the challenges you see in DevOps is DevOps really was started by pro coders, and these pro coders, are used to using things like Git and other tools that are just scripted, and that works for them. But if you look at systems like Salesforce, in our survey of DevOps on Salesforce, we found that 80% of the teams that are developing on Salesforce are a mixture of low coders and pro coders. So you have to unite admins, architects, and developers in a single process. And as Nixon said earlier, a lot of it is about visibility and traceability, making sure you know what's going on. And then the other challenge is these Fortune companies are not doing one thing at a time with small teams. They're managing multiple projects in parallel in Salesforce, sometimes with 10 to 20 production orgs and hundreds of developers working on similar projects and at the same time. And it causes challenges. And so Copado is all about managing those projects and decreasing the problem resolution time. Next slide. So what I'd like to focus on today is just this concept that digital experiences, you hear Salesforce themselves talking about digital experiences. And these are really the processes that customers are using today. And it's really driven from the experiences that they're having in the consumer market. And so it's very common in a commerce site, such as with Coca-Cola, who's Coca-Cola Europe is one of our customers, where they want to register a new user, browse a catalog, add it to the cart, do the checkout, fulfill the order, and deliver the order. Now, that is a very common process that we're all used to today. But underneath the covers, this is being done on multiple systems. It's customer data is in Salesforce, and then there's an inventory check that's going on in SAP and API calls, and then maybe the order is done in NetSuite, and billing is done by Zora, and ServiceNow has got your customer support. So these digital experiences are that, first of all, they have to be 5 nines. They can't be breakable. and they run across multiple systems at the same time. So they're tough. It's not just a matter of doing DevOps on one platform. You're actually doing DevOps on multiple platforms at the same time in coordination. So next slide. And one of the biggest challenges that you see is people want to go fast, but you need to go fast with quality, and you need to make sure that you're detecting issues early in the process. This is a very common slide that you'll see referenced. It's if I find a bug after it's been released, it costs me 640 times as much to repair the defect and deal with the fallout as it does if I'm finding it in the coding side of things. So it's really very expensive to wait. You need to find things as early as possible. Next slide.
There'll be an opportunity to take the poll. Please go ahead and take the poll. Thank you for sharing the post. Looks like majority of them Salesforce customers. So glad to have you all.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Not a surprise there. Okay, here's this. If you can close, I have to close that down myself, I guess. Let's see. Yeah. So as I said earlier, this is the results we got back from our survey. 62% of teams that are developing on Salesforce are a balance of code-based developers and click-based developers. And if you include mostly click-based or mostly code-based, it's 80% of the teams. It's rare that teams are always code-based or always click-based developers. And so your solutions need to accommodate both of those. So let's go on to the next slide. And so we have really focused in on continuous quality, because it's not just adopting DevOps is one thing, but what you really need to do is adopt DevOps with continuous integration and continuous delivery. But in order to have true CI and CD to go fast, you need to do that with a surety that you're not going to break anything. As we saw, if you break something in production, it's absolutely expensive to do that. And so what we've identified is really that testing is no longer a discrete phase. You can often see plan, build, test, deliver, and monitor, or plan, build, verify, deliver, and monitor. But that's just not realistic. That verify is a discrete phase of your quality framework. It needs to be continuous, and it needs to be continuous security and compliance and testing. And so we believe, and we've defined this quality-driven pipelines, and quality-driven pipelines are embedded in, orchestrated by, and enforced by the CI/CD DevOps pipeline. So testing is not something that you do once you think you're ready. It is embedded within the entire DevOps process. It's organized around the Agile object model. We believe strongly that you use user stories to track the value that you're delivering and the changes that you're delivering. You should be using the Agile object model to also manage your testing and making sure that as that user story moves through your pipeline, that you're doing the right tests. And as I said earlier, it's not only functional testing and unit testing, but it's security and compliance as well. Next slide. This kind of goes and reinforces that as well. So it's compliance and security, but and functional testing. It's also API testing. It's unit testing. It's performance testing. It's really, at the end of the day, DevSecOps plus. It's more than just functional testing, and it's really testing at the right time, testing the right things at the right time. Next slide. Again, you hear people talk about shift right, and shift right is all about making sure that you're testing after it's been deployed into production. It's absolutely critical that you do that. In fact, running tests on a periodic basis enables you to monitor the performance in production. You know, we think about monitoring in the Salesforce world is I don't need to monitor. Salesforce is doing my monitoring for me. And that's true. They are monitoring the infrastructure. But there's a lot of things can be changed with a click of a mouse by an admin that can actually break your digital experience. And so you need to not only test once you've deployed, but you need to get in the habit of monitoring processes to make sure that they're still working, so before your customers know. And then you hear people talk about shift left, and shift left is also good. As you saw, the earlier you can find a bug in the process, the earlier you find it, the less expensive it costs to fix this issue. And so shift left makes sense as well. And so this is our basis of saying it's not a discrete phase anymore. It is continuous from shift left through the traditional in the middle to the shift right as well. You're testing throughout the entire process. Next slide. Oh, we have another poll. So we did the survey out to our customers in our status of DevOps on Salesforce. I'd love to know, what are your teams? Are your teams a mixture? Are they almost all code developers or click-based? What do your teams look like?
So for 60% participated, I'll give you a few more seconds. So this is how the results looks like. Mostly code-based developers and click-based developers.
Cool. Thank you for that.
Go on to the next slide.
Yes. So the other thing to do is, if you embrace this idea of continuous testing, you also need to be aware that you need to right-size your tests, because you don't want to slow your developers down. If I'm doing a test a regression test makes sense, right? If I do an integration of multiple features and I'm into an existing process, I want to make sure that I didn't break anything. And yes, I'm going to be testing the individual user stories, but I need to make sure that I didn't have a chain reaction or some kind of side effect that broke something else. So it's common to run a regression test, but you can't run the regression test every time a developer merges a change into the integration environment, right? Because those regression tests in many cases take hours to run. And so you need to make sure that the tests that you're running in the continuous integration phase are fast and simple. The unit tests, that's why you're doing unit tests. You can do functional tests on individual test cases related to that particular user story. You can do compliance and security. If I've added in a new piece of code, I can do static security testing. I can also do open source software compliance. Make sure that the developer didn't add a new library that was an unapproved library into the code base as part of this change. Those are all very fast things that you can do and should do in the CI phase of what's going on. But now, as you go into the latter stages of your pipeline, when you're getting into testing and staging and production, that's where you need to start looking at long-running regression tests and making sure that that you're really ready, especially in the staging, that you've got everything there. You've got approval from the CCB if you happen to be a financial services or a pharma company, and you need to basically stage your release before and get approval before you go to production. That's the time period and the time the pipeline phase where you can do your long running tests. But one of the things to keep in mind, if you're doing these long running tests and you find an issue, that's when you need to make sure that you're messaging back to the developer through Slack or Teams or whatever collaboration tool they're using, so that they're aware that there was a problem going on. They've gone and by that time they've gone on to the next user story, or maybe the second or third user story. So make sure that you're automating these things. Make sure you're doing the right tests in the right phases, and that you're communicating correctly when these issues are being found. Next slide.
Reminder to all the participants who joined a little late, we'll be going through Q&A at the end of the session. So if you have any Q&A, please feel free to type in the Q&A chat. Already I see some few questions coming in. Please type your question there, and we all address every question at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, and this is something that I mentioned earlier is we believe that you should organize your tests using an agile object model. Traditionally you have a functional test management tool, and you have test cases and you have test suites, and a test suite is simply a collection of tests that you're running in a group. Well, that's fine, I guess, if you're able to manage it and you're able to give it appropriate names. But what's really important, we believe, is the end-to-end business processes, and that's what really matters to users. If you ask a person in the accounts payable or the accounts receivable department what they do, they're not going to come back and say, well, I log into Salesforce and I use this tab and that tab and this other tab. No, they say, I generate an invoice, I present an order, I receive funds and credit them to an account. Their focus is on the processes that they're doing. And so your testing should be based on the processes that are being accomplished as well and managed that way. And if you look at change, how do you make change in a DevOps environment? You're making that through user stories, through features and epics. And so it just makes sense that you're organizing the tests around the agile object model, and your production iterations are managed through releases. So the release is actually another really good object in your DevOps model to make sure that you've got all of the right tests run and organized around that. So don't just use a test suite to accumulate a bunch of things. Use your agile object model and associate your tests with the appropriate level of object within that model. Next slide.
We have another poll question. I'll give it 30 seconds. Please go ahead and take it. This will be the last poll for this webinar. Please go ahead and take it. Thank you. So regarding automated testing, I see half of the participants do manual testing and half of them practice test-driven development. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and that's actually, we found the same thing. We found that 83% of the companies out there do manual testing. That doesn't mean all of their testing is done manually, but they still do some manual testing. And those that do automate the tests, a lot of them are more people are using functional tests in automation, unit tests, than they are GUI driven. Only about 33% of the automated tests out there are GUI driven tests, because it's typically very difficult to write in something like Selenium. Of course, we have Copado robotic testing, and that is a robot test framework, and you're using a much more English language version of testing commands, and it's much easier to use. But this is again, the idea is that your testing is not just functional testing, but it's something that's testing across the entire spectrum of functional and performance and otherwise. But the other thing to keep in mind is that there are collections of tools. Even though we may love that you would use Copado robotic testing for your functional testing, you may actually have some previously used Provar and still have a lot of Provar testing that's going on, or you may have Tricentis in your organization, and in your SAP practice, for example, maybe you're using Tricentis to do the testing there. So it's important that the tool that you're using for DevOps is able to support multiple tools in the appropriate places. And so one of the things that Copado does in our quality gates is we have this idea of our integration framework that enables us to integrate with third parties, whether they're our tools or third-party tools. It makes it easy for you to plug in your testing tools into this process so that you're able to run the right test in the right tool at the right time. Next slide. And then you need to ensure separation of duties. And what does that mean? Well, security and quality teams should set the quality tests that should be run, and the rules. They should write the rules and the definition of the acceptance criteria. And so one of the things we have is in our quality gates, we enable you to empower the security and quality teams to write declarative rules that say, hey, in my Salesforce platform, if the type of change is an Apex class and it starts with test or it ends with test, then I want to require that you run a static code analysis and that you have to pass it with no bugs and no more than 2 smells in your static code analysis. So that the pipeline then enforces a rule. So if you write this declarative rule, and then as the user story is going through the pipeline, the pipeline is able to look at this change and determine which one of the rules that have been written by the security and quality teams should apply to this change. And this comment at the top really is you should separate the duties. Now, the challenge you see in a lot of companies is that the developers are the ones that are crafting together, they're rolling their own DevOps solution. What happens if I'm in a pressure situation as a developer and my static code analysis isn't passing, but I'm the one that actually put together the pipeline using Jenkins? I can simply go into that script and comment out the requirement for a static code analysis and rerun the script, and I'm good to go because I'm taking that test anymore. So we really believe foxes shouldn't guard the hen houses, let alone build the hen house. So next slide. We think that if you do this right, we've done an economic impact of Copado study with Forrester, and what you find is that if you do this, if you put these principles into practice, then you'll find that you're actually speeding your system up. You're doing 20 times more releases, and there are less unused features. You have fewer production issues, faster time to restoration when there are issues, and you end up with a very large value delivered to your users. So we think that you should really take a look at implementing some of these processes, and certainly think that you should take a look at using Copado to do that. Next slide.
Thank you, David. Appreciate sharing your insight. David talked about the great solutions and product he has. What's the point having this if you don't have a champion who can take this and transform into a solution for the customers? So the next speaker we have, it's a bold leader, it's outstanding champion innovator who long time back thought about all those things and made changes in one of the Fortune 500 company. I'm so glad to have him and share his story with you and inspire you all and in your digital transformation. James, take it away.
Great, thank you, Nixon. And David, I can't tell you how many times I smiled as you're going through your slides because so many true words there. So let me give you a little background on how we started this journey, because I know for all of you it's going to be very different as to how you approach this. For us, it really started far before I even knew what Salesforce was. Honestly, before Copado even was a company, it came to us as we started our startup in San Diego and started working through building a multi-tenant solution that really had to focus on automation and scale. As our team grew our product, as we grew our customer base, we had a lot of strain around the way we did releases, the way we worked as a company. And so we had to bring in a lot more testing, a lot more automation, and ultimately what matured into a DevOps mindset. So exactly what you were highlighting, Nixon, this is a DevOps journey. And so our team being a group of 100% pro coders, really no configuration or any of that on our prior product, we had this mindset of building a really, DevSecOps mindset of full automation, implementation, testing across the entire life cycle. We were acquired by a Fortune 100, and our team was immersed into this new culture and very different landscapes. And my landscape was basically ownership of technology across the entire sales and CX lifecycle. So it was a whole new world for me in technologies and teams and mindsets and skill sets. And so we had a way to think differently and bring a different perspective to products that had been just operating in one continuous way for a long time. One of those products that was under my remit was Salesforce. And being that we're one of the largest customers for Salesforce and largest install base, we had a unique problem as to how we were implementing Salesforce. It was not a strategy as to how it was implemented within the company. We had 39 orgs roughly when I took it over. Of those 39, about 10 were really predominantly used and much larger than the rest of them. So let's just say out of the 39, 10 are significant. Of those 10, I was focused on one. This drawing you're seeing here on the right was my team's attempt to map out the process of how we go from a team on the left into production on the right. This is a real drawing. This is a real scenario that we walk through. And so you can imagine, the hand's not real, but the rest of this is real. You can imagine that if you're going through this process and you're trying to get to production, how do you do any of those things that David just said, right? You can't test. And if I did test, what does it mean? What does it matter if I follow one of these lines and test somewhere in the middle, then it goes to prod? By the way, 9, 10, 11 other teams are going to push to prod and they're going to write over those changes. Or I've got some admin that's got access and they're putting chain sets directly in prod and my code's going to overwrite them. So complete disaster as to how we got to this point. But my team with this mindset of DevOps became a catalyst for change. And that's where we said, we've got to come up with a completely different process. Because next slide, when we went to do releases, this is how we would communicate out to our business. Hey, we've got X amount of months, quarters. We've got these blue flags that are planned releases. That's the way we started off. What happened in reality, and these flags are green, but I'll assure you, these are definitely red. In reality, we would release a planned release and we would have outage, P1s, severities, open up the bridges. I mean, just constant issues that came up from these releases because the teams weren't communicating. The teams didn't test together. The environments were not consistent. Changes in production didn't exist in the environments that I was working in other areas. So even if I were to test, I would never test that one cycle or that one scenario that would encounter in production. So a planned release, given the way we were doing things very manually, organizing the chain sets, communication, getting all of our leadership aligned, would cost the company around $90,000 per release. Now, keep in mind, this company is running right around 50 billion in revenue. So it's, 90,000 is not a significant number, but it's something we certainly track to. When it came to our off-cycle releases, this number is significant. We're talking $250,000 per off-cycle release. And so I'm looking at the way that we're operating, I'm looking at how we're executing, the time to get the value out of the team. This is so painful, and I can't highlight the pain levels for our leadership, for our individual users, and for me being selfish, my team. Right, I had calls from employees that would say, "Hey, James, I can't go to my son's soccer game," or "I'm having problems with my wife because we're having dates and I can't go out." I actually had one call that was literally they were just about to travel down a path of divorce. And this is not an exaggeration at all. This is true life reality of when you have teams that are working 24/7 to fix issues, it is extremely stressful. So we had to figure out something new. And that is exactly where we went into finding a solution. We met the Copado team. We evaluated several tools. This was by far the right tool for us. And there's a transition, and David kind of walked you through that of how the mindset of the team. We certainly had, at this company, it would be a mix of predominantly low coders with a bit of pro coders. And we shifted that to almost like I don't know if you have a midterm, but somewhere in the middle that was like the coders got a little more advanced and they used some more traditional tools, the low coders, and the pro coders stopped doing as much and started working more on the integration and testing. But we had to change the skill sets, change the tool sets, and change the way we operated. And as I mentioned before on that prior slide with this dependency spaghetti, that was for one org. Once we got into this and we did this for our primary sales instance, I mentioned the 10 instances, we started rolling this out really quickly in our other orgs because we had the playbook. We knew how to do this. We knew what it would look like to train the team, bring them up to speed, and bring them onto these other orgs, and got to the point where as this company would acquire new companies, they would have their own deployment of Salesforce and say, hey, we want to use your system. We want to use your deployment process. Can you train us? Can you teach us? Can we use your licensing? Can we work together on making this happen? And so we had this concept of a platform team that was a centralized team that provided a service for everybody to use, for everyone to leverage in terms of being your kind of center of excellence for best practices, for deployments. And that's where you see this deployment org. We had a single org that managed all the deployments going out. Now, when I looked at the deployments prior to, we were getting roughly 4 a month, and it was a complete and utter disaster. With this model, we were getting to 2 releases a day. And that is a dramatic change. I mean, I never hoped to have that level of success with this, to be honest. I was hoping for roughly 1 a week. And making it easy and making it effective. But we got to 2 a day, and that was a shocking number. We started looking back on the releases. So from a development perspective, tons of testing, tons of deployments, lots of interaction, and tons of scale. So very, very successful use of Copado within our system. Next slide. So what we started to look at is, well, okay, these are great. These numbers are phenomenal. How do we start to break into individual sections to see how we're performing in certain areas? The lead time for change was really interesting because our leaders wanted us to change and be able to adapt a lot faster than we were. And it says 5 to 13 days here. The reality is that could be much longer depending on how we talk through our changes, how they'd impact the system. One of the biggest requests around this was around citizen development. And we have, my team has, let's say, 120 Salesforce developers, but throughout the organization, there might have been another 100 Salesforce developers that sat across the entire org. And we want to empower these people that have, in some cases, they're certified technical architects. I mean, these are very talented people that may be talented than a majority of my team. So why not empower them to make changes? So we built a system that gated a way for our citizen developers to make contributions, pull requests. We could bring them back into the system and ultimately integrate their changes. So we were able to get meaningful changes into the system much faster and reducing that lead time for change because we broadened our team. It's not up to, we're trying to make more money for the company. We want to be more effective. And if we have experts in the field, we want to bring them in. When it came to the deployment frequency, we talked about this one. This was, going from a couple a month and just a disaster to 2 plus a day. And this was just a very lightweight process for the team to be able to roll these out, to have standard communication as to what's happening. The biggest challenge on the deployment frequency was change management. We had a lot of leaders that came out and said, hey, no, absolutely not. I can't put 2 releases out on the Salesforce a day. My team can't handle the change. They're focused on sales. I don't want to deal with that. And I told them, look, I'm not going back to our COO and saying, we're not going to deploy out as frequently as we can because you need better documentation and change management. I don't get a permission on my phone to how often I'm going to get changes. It's just, I just set the automatic update. I'm going to learn. It's fine. We'll figure it out. We're going to get the auto update. So we worked with leadership to ensure that our frequency was always up to date and aligned to, what we could do because the value was there. It was absolutely worth doing it. And by the way, very little pushback once we did this. The team absolutely loved it. And they loved it because our change rate failure went from 20%, probably more like 50%, frankly. We probably just didn't want to put that on the slide when we were using these internally because it's so dramatic, but down to 1.8%. And what that really meant was no one really even noticed the releases except for the person that was asking for the feature. Things went out without downtime. Things went out without any type of issues hitting our system. And literally, we would open up P1 bridges with Salesforce, with our other partners to find and track issues. And it was a very significant and expensive problem. So dropping that change rate failure down to almost 0, it was just game changing and made everyone a much happier employee and user within the company. And then finally, our mean time to recovery. Again, from a prior process standard, we didn't really have a way to recover. It was really hard for us to track down what changes were made because we had so many people interacting with the system that we just couldn't get there. Once we locked things down, we could get that down to a couple of hours to try and recover things. But, certainly when we're making major changes and partner with Salesforce to make some of these changes, there's no way back. So when we got to a point of using a standard process with Copado, we had a way to recover. We had documentation. We had confidence that we knew what was going into every environment and documentation all along the way. So it went from fingers crossed, let's hope this works, oh my God, we're screwed, to it's all smooth. Things are green lights. I can go back and I can enjoy my personal life because I'm no longer waiting for the phone to ring because I know everything's going to melt down. So, that was my experience with Copado. And, really it was a game changer for so many different ways for our team and for our company. And I'm really just thankful that we were able to embark on that journey and find success.
Thank you very much, James, inspiring and sharing the story. We have 15 minutes to go. I saw one of the participants raise a hand. We are taking a Q&A to text. You can text in this Q&A text. We are not opening a line for Q&A. So it's a good time to type your question if you have any question for Dave, James, or myself. With that, I'm going to go to the Q&A. James, David, can you see the question or you want me to read? I'll go ahead and read the question to everybody who can benefit from that. The first question is, how is Copado's integration with ALM Soft's Jira Agile? Dave, you want to take that?
Sure. We have an automated integration called Copado Connect, and it connects in with Jira and Azure DevOps. And in fact, real soon now, we will be releasing a version that connects with ServiceNow for people that use ServiceNow to track their tickets. It's a bidirectional sync. It enables you to sync not only user stories, but also epics and other records, and in fact do field mapping. So we think we're really proud of the Copado Connect tool and how it automates your connection with Jira. So our customers in practice, they have multiple teams and they've standardized on Jira or Azure DevOps, and so they do primarily their planning in Jira. And we just automate the import into Copado, and then we update the status so that if you're in Jira, you can see the status of your user story as it's going through the pipeline.
Thank you, David. Then I see a multiple question here. Then probably I'm going to combine them into one. So what are the tangible steps someone can take to migrate to Copado? How long will it take? How much it will cost? Every prospective and potential buyer want to know those things. Can you address those, Dave?
Well, I'm not in the sales organization, so I am not authorized to talk cost or pricing or anything like that. Copado, I think Copado is a really good tool for mature DevOps teams. We also make it really possible for people that are doing select and deploy with change sets or other tools to I would say update their processes and get into automation and use user story based production. So I think it's the right tool. I mean, we've been building it. I've been with the company 4 years, but the founders started the company 8 years ago, and they started the company because they were trying to do deployments across the world. And just ran into so many problems, they just decided to build a tool that would make their lives easier. And it's from this practical experience of people that were doing this day to day that the tool emerged. So I'm biased, but I think it's the right tool. James, maybe you could add your opinion on why you guys chose Copado over others.
Yeah, so we did an exhaustive search, and we had to because, again, just being totally transparent, I had zero budget. I had zero approval to go into this, but I knew this was a real problem that we had to solve. So we went in to look at everything from, kind of a off the shelf, super basic solution to really comprehensive enterprise. And what we found was not only did our use case exceed pretty much every tool's capability, but we needed to find a way to solve a much broader problem so that the only tool that really hit every use case we had was Copado. And then the second real piece of that I know it was really challenging was the volume and size. So we're, the repos associated to this are massive. And so we needed a company that really could stand behind and had the budget to stand behind scaling the solution at the level that an enterprise really needs. So that was a huge catalyst to picking Copado, as well as the ability to check nearly every box on our requirements.
Yeah, thank you, James and David. Next question is about competition. They are looking into Copado, well as they want to understand what is the competitive landscape. Is any one of you want to take that question?
I could address that. We have 3 or 4 competitors that are focused entirely on the Salesforce space, and they've got good products that they've worked on. They're catching up with us in some ways as far as functionality is concerned. I would say that what sets us apart is what James was just talking about. These other tools tend to be appropriate for small teams of people when you're at a first level of maturity where you're doing a compare and comparing 2 orgs together and then selecting the changes and deploying them forward. That works really well. We also have a product called Essentials. Copado Essentials was a company that was a competitor of ours, and we said, you know what, for people in that kind of situation, let's buy this company and make it part of the Copado family. So if you're looking for something that is very lightweight, that you could get started for free and try, and you just want to be able to compare orgs and take changes and graduate from change sets, then Copado Essentials is a really good tool for that. But if you're looking to step up to full pipeline automations and CI/CD, then it's Copado Enterprise that we think is the best tool for that. But the competitors have some pretty good products, and they've been around for a few years as well. And in this world, if you're a leader, you can't rest on your laurels. You have to keep on moving forward and building and establishing your lead and continuing it. And that's what we've been doing. If you have a chance and you want to attend our launch for the fall release, you can hear some really, really interesting things that we've added into the pipeline that make automation and quality pipelines just much, much easier. Very, very simple to use. I'd love to have everybody sign up for our release webinar and learn a lot more about the details of what we've got.
Thank you, David. The next question is do we have any steps to automate the user stories, validate against production?
There's, the nicest thing about our product is we're built on top of the Salesforce platform, which means you have access to flows, which means you have access to any of the timed jobs that anything that you can do to automate things on Salesforce can be used to automate Copado. And so if you wanted to do a daily Git snapshot, or if you wanted to, then that's pretty easy to do. You just set up a timer and how many times a day do you want to do it? If you want to automate a user story, then our entire pipeline is full of automation capabilities, both forward and backward. If you think about one of the biggest challenges that customers have is keeping their sandboxes in sync. And so in Copado, the pipeline not only enables you to automate your forward promotion and validation of user stories as you're going forward, but you can also set up automated rules that once a story makes it into staging, for example, that you can back promote that user story to the left, so that these changes are now updated in all the developer sandboxes.
Yeah, thank you, David. I have a couple of questions similar. For automating the Git snapshot daily, do we just need to change the frequency, or we need to go with the scheduled job?
There are multiple ways to do it, and I think I'm probably not the best person to advise that.
So what I'm going to do, I know the Robert, I'm going to share my contact details with you. You can email me. We'll make sure that somebody from engineering team with the David's team will connect and get you the answer for that. The next question is, if you have to build a Git repo with Copado, Is there a panel window that's not available? Something like that? It's not clearly written.
We have a merge conflict resolution.
3-panel window. I think they're trying to ask if you have a built
Right.
like
we have a merge conflict resolution panel, and it can be either 2-panel or 3-panel. You can see what your changes were on the left and the right, and then you can actually choose what the resolutions are, and even edit in place in the middle window. You can look at that not only for code, but for XML. And if you're dealing with XML, we have a YAML view where you click a button and the XML turns into YAML, which makes it a hell of a lot easier to edit in place. So yeah, I think I'm really happy with our 3-panel window, and it should be available to you no matter which Git repo you're using.
Okay, all right. Thank you, David. Then one final question for James. James, like what catalyst caused your organization to look for DevOps tool? You shared how it benefited, how it helped you, all those things. There's one takeaway you want to give the audience. What catalyst? What you would say?
I still remember standing in my garage Saturday morning, and I got that phone call from the employee about trouble in his family. That was the moment. I'm like, you know what? From this point forward, we're gonna change this process. This is too hard for individuals to work, and we need a better way to impact the team. I was new in role at that time, so this wasn't even my primary focus. It became my primary focus quickly, and as we jumped into it, we saw the complexity. But ultimately, the effort and the value here is tremendous. So what we walked away from, and truly what we ended up setting up for this company, was so amazing. We had a follow-up call with another company, another Fortune 50 chip maker, that they embarked on the same journey, and we talked about our best practices and shared them with them. So truly, the catalyst was wanting to do the right thing by our team and people.
Thank you, James. Appreciate Dave and James. We have like a few more minutes to go. I would like to quickly introduce about a company. Soft Clouds is founded, San Diego-based company. We've been in the business for 17 years now. We are a proud partner of Copado, Salesforce, Oracle, and several cloud platform out there. These are some of our Salesforce clients. We work from Fortune 500 to mid-size to even startup, where there is a digital transformation need. We partner with all sorts of companies. This is a service at a very high level where we do implementation, integration, and DevOps solutions for the clients. This is my contact information. You have my email address. If you have any question for David or James, would you like to follow up with him or his team, feel free to send an email to me. I'll make sure that that he and his team respond back. If you have any query to me, generally where we partner with the clients, feel free to send an email to me as well. So with that, any closing thought from Dave and James, your side?
Just from my side, it was a pleasure to be here with you guys today. And if you do have any questions that we didn't answer, I saw the one comment about the Academy article that maybe was incorrect. I would love it. Send an email to Nixon, and we will follow up and make sure that you're there. You know, we believe that we truly believe in the customer success is really the goal of our company. And if it's not working for you, we want to figure out a way to make it happen, make it work for you and make you successful.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's just been a very passionate area for me. So I know I'm no longer with this company, but it's something I've definitely appreciated being a major partner of and working through the experience.
Yeah, thank you. I want to participate. I want to thank all the participants who took their time off in the busy schedule to be part of this. I look forward to staying in touch with you all. David Brooks, thank you for your time. James Scudell, thank you. I'd like to thank our marketing manager, Renee, and Bala Tech Support, making this webinar possible, along with Dan and Alan from Copado. Thank you for everything, making this webinar successful. Appreciate everyone.